The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready. Let's get going. How about that? Let's go with the like and subscribe button. We appreciate that. And we want your thoughts on the message board, as there are plenty of things to talk about. Have you seen Cooper Mays? That is on our YouTube page. If you haven't seen that yet, he's always great to listen to. His comments inspired me in a couple of different ways. And that has to do with Nico Iamaleava's practice attire. Does he wear pajama bottoms in practice? Really? Is that what's going on? We shall discuss. Tennessee, the least active portal team in the offseason in the SEC. Danny White makes some strong NIL comments in that he's just accepting it as part of the process. Why wouldn't he? FanDuel, and I'm sorry, I should have told you to jump on this earlier. They increased their win total for the Vols from 8.5 to 9.5. What does that say about Tennessee? Boise State says no NIL for freshmen. That's not smart. And we count down the 10 most important volunteers headed into the 2024 season. It is an offensive lineman. We'll get to him a little bit later in the program. The show represented by Banks & Jones. Banks & Jones. Play to win. Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dave?
I am fantastic, except I was asked a little something odd by a fan at the gym the other day. So I asked Cooper Mays about it, and I want to get to it now.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So this guy comes up to me the other day at the gym, and he goes, I think it's weird that Nico Iamaleava wears pajama bottoms in practice. And I'm like, I've seen practice. I've seen Nico wear pajama bottoms. I haven't seen them happen at the same time. So I asked Cooper Mays about it. He said he shows up to the facility in pajama bottoms, but everybody has workout gear they have to put on to be in the facility, whether it's the weight room or whether it's on the football field. So unless he's going and throwing on his own, which nobody would object to, he's not throwing in pajama bottoms. It's almost as if the lore of Nico has gotten as big as his talent. Does that sentence make sense to you, Caleb?
The allure of Nico has gotten as big as his talent?
The lore, L-O-R-E, not A-L-L-U-R-E. So the lore, it's almost like he's Polynesian, so he has to be super tough, and he has to be super competitive. He is from California, so he has to be kind of laid back. He wears pajama pants, so that's kind of cool, isn't it? It's just like the lore of Nico has gotten bigger than the impact he may even have on Tennessee's program.
Yeah, we are following a lot of Nico right now and a lot of his personal stuff, and you're right, it's kind of funny. As long as he doesn't get a girlfriend that doesn't exist.
Very fair point.
You know,
very fair point.
I think the lore is very much there. I wonder if we should ask him if his pajama pants helped him steal Manti Te'o's girlfriend. I'm sorry.
Right. Or ask him about his big blue ox, because right now, it's a Paul Bunyan status. It's huge. Speaking of Paul Bunyan status, Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. We have a Paul Bunyan type of giveaway soon. Time to stomp the Gators. We'll give away a Garmin watch. Tell you more about that. Go to rickterryjewelry.com, rickterryjewelry.com, and just tell them, hey, Dave Hooker sent me, so I wanted to stop in and say hello. Probably do something free for you, take care of you. He does that. He's not going to wear pajama bottoms on the Vol walk, though, is he? Nico?
What if he wore a suit jacket with pajama bottoms? What if he did that, guys? Let's
pajama bottoms as a suit, kind of looking like that Carmelo Anthony long suit that they had that they make.
Oh, I forgot it, man. Early
on
2000s was a vibe with the outfits.
Yeah.
Man.
All right. Would you legitimately, really, would you have a problem if he wore pajama bottoms on the Vol walk is in some shape, form, or fashion? Used to be the previous administrations, it had to be suit and tie, which a lot of them hated. And you probably saw the picture of Jacob Warren when he's giving the peace sign on his last home game, and he's dressed in something casual. I think it was like all orange. So the rules aren't there nearly as much as they were, or maybe it's for senior day. But would it be like a slap in the face of nostalgia and history if he wore pajama bottoms in the Vol walk to a game? What say you? And let's make that the poll question when we can. I want to hear from you on the message board, but the question is, would you be offended if Nico Iamaleava wore pajama pants on the Vol walk? That's the question I want to ask of you today. And the national media. Right now. Yeah, let's go with that. Travis calls it an urban legend. I agree. Hit like and subscribe. It has gotten that big. Now, the thing that I will tell you about the national media, Travis, is here's what's going to happen the first time Nico Iamaleava has a bad game. They go, oh, it's those pajama pants, and he seems a little too laid back. If he doesn't have elite success, Caleb, we are going to hear the very same narrative that you heard out of blank. Can you guess who I'm going to pick? What player had, I thought, a very inaccurate reputation because of his team's lack of success? From California.
Casey Clausen.
Right. If Nico Iamaleava doesn't have elite success as a team, let's not forget in that SEC championship game that Dante Stallworth and Travis Stevens both turned the ball over in the second half, okay? Don't blame Casey for that. He should have been an SEC championship quarterback, potentially a national championship quarterback.
Casey made a lot of mistakes in that game, too. Don't let Casey off the hook.
He did. But
he missed Kelly Washington on a fade that was so wide open for a touchdown.
He did. And Julian Battle dropped an interception. We could go on and on, but he wasn't the main reason I thought they lost. Nevertheless, that's what people are going to say about Nico, is he's too casual. He's too laid back if he doesn't win. Am I wrong or right? Which I know I'm throwing a monstrous if in there because you think they're going to be really good, and so do I.
Yes. I think you're wrong in this way with Nico. I don't think Nico, if anybody's followed him, has the same level of laid backness as Clausen did. It wasn't just the way Clausen dressed. Like, Clausen had he had emotion, but I mean, he really cared, but he had such a nonchalant personality, like about everything, that you kind of got the vibe he didn't care. And also, you got to remember this. I agree Casey Clausen was misunderstood. It wasn't like he didn't have a bit of an ego where his mouth got in the way a lot of times. Remember when he missed the Georgia game, Dave, and he said, if I was playing, we would have won by 2 touchdowns? And then the next year, he goes and loses at home 41-14 to Georgia?
Which, I can't criticize because I loved it at the time.
I was
like, that was cool. He did. He brought some of that upon himself. And I still remember with the video cameras around after that 2001 SEC championship game, he said, well, came out here and we played the best we could, because he was upset with Travis Stevens. At least I'm reading into this. He was upset with Stevens and Stallworth for the turnovers. And he just kind of goes, with this shoulder shrug for you on our audio platforms, and did the best we could. The best you could is not what people are looking for in the SEC championship game. So he was a little tone deaf to how some of his comments were being read. It was actually, I remember that game, and it was mind-boggling to me that, I hate to say this usually, but you could tell LSU was more excited to play that game than Tennessee. And Tennessee had a chance to go to the national championship game, and LSU wanted it more, which was just embarrassing. And part of that was, again, I will tell you guys, look it up. It happened. Stevens fumbled.
Fulmer let Stevens fly to New York 2 days before that for his Doak Walker Award ceremony since he was a finalist. Why do you let somebody fly to New York the week of a SEC championship game, Dave?
True. I mean, again, if Casey Clausen wins that game, the narrative of he's too laid back is gone. A championship ring does that. By the way, Travis, I see you prefer the suit and tie. Would you prefer that as well on the message board? And we'll reset the poll question here momentarily. But if he wins that game, despite whose fault it is, the narrative is completely changed. He's an SEC champion. The narrative on Nico is going to be very similar to Casey Clausen if he doesn't win a championship, which you and I both think he will. I'm just saying. Travis says, I prefer the suit and tie. Also, we'll get you on the message board. Do you prefer the suit and tie, or are you up for pajama pants, Caleb?
It depends on the level of... I don't care personally, but I will tell you this. Funny enough, I understand how Tennessee fans come. A lot of Tennessee fans, and I get it, respect a certain... They think there's a certain level of respect you should have for the traditions, and the Vol Walk is a major tradition. It's one of the... Probably many people take the most pride in that because they say that's the one tradition that Tennessee has that is better than other schools that have it. And
I think it's the coolest they have, except for running through the T. I think those are the top two, in my opinion. And they stopped torturing that horse, so that was a good thing.
Well, yeah. So where I am,
you have to torture a walking horse to make it prance like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. So
let's talk about Smokey.
Okay, so can we ask the question though? Like, I will say this: like Philip Fulmer was a guy who really respected Tennessee traditions, and he would make you wear the suit and tie, and I understand that. Josh Heupel,
you brought him up because I have a transition. Go.
Josh Heupel, I don't think really cares about that stuff at all. I think Josh Heupel wears a suit with tennis shoes. You know what I mean? When he has to go, like, he doesn't want to wear a suit. He wears a suit when he has to. Josh Heupel likes ball, and all he wants to do is talk ball and focus on ball. And he's not going to be like, you think Josh Heupel's going to be the guy to say you got to respect the tradition and wear a suit and tie? No, because he wouldn't wear a suit and tie if he didn't have to.
No. I love what Smoky Mountain Red said, I don't think anyone will care once he starts slinging TDs. That is absolutely true. But what if he doesn't? And most college football players do struggle at some point. Will that be the narrative of just too laid back? I think you're going to see that. I think it's unfair. And I want to say this again. Maybe I'm stereotyping, and maybe this is reverse racism, but I have never been around a Polynesian prospect or a football player that wasn't the most competitive dude that I've ever been around. I mean, it is. And I talked to Cooper Mays about this too. And he said, it's just in their culture. Take pride in what you do. Take pride in family. So I think the chances of this not panning out are almost zero. But you know what they're going to do? And the reason you brought up Philip Fulmer that made something click. You know what people hated was the hand clap.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Do something bad. But really, psychologically, that's the right thing to do. You lift a person up when they do something bad, and you bring them down when they do something good, if you want to study leadership skills. Okay, so he was doing the right thing. That didn't annoy anybody until about 1996-97 when they're losing to Florida and they're not going to make an SEC or national championship. That didn't bother anybody before that. And then it was like, that damn hand clap, I hate it. It wasn't the hand clap that people hated. It was the not being in championships that people hated.
But you also have to remember this. Here's why it didn't work all the time with Fulmer. He also did the hand clap when things went right. So I
don't remember that as much. So I'm going to take your word for it. I just remember the doing it when things went wrong. Like,
so
for instance,
I'll give you a notable example.
Elias points out the Witten bungled play in Florida 2001.
Witten had like 5 bungled plays against Florida in 2001. Jason Witten almost single-handedly lost that game to Florida.
Weird, because one of their best pros had his worst game in one of the biggest games in SEC history. But go ahead.
Yeah, he had a horrible game that day, but it was. So I just an example is Florida, the 98 Florida game. Tennessee won on the first drive when Florida's driving. Remember when the first fumble that Al Wilson forced in the end zone that Raynoch Thompson recovered?
Yes.
Fulmer's clapping. Fulmer's clapping right there. He's clapping for his team. I wouldn't be clapping. I'd be like, okay, you got the fumble, but why did you let them drive all the way down to the red zone on the first drive? you got lucky there. And
Now that's good. That's good leadership skills because they're up and you bring them back down a little bit. That's
right,
good
but
leadership.
Fulmer didn't do that. He just clapped for him for forcing the fumble.
Okay. I remembered it just as a negative thing, like it happened during a negative time, but I could be wrong. Quality Tire Pros never negative. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires are right there on Cherokee Boulevard downtown, and they'll do brake work, alignment work, full service. QualityTirePros.com, QualityTirePros.com, or on Cherokee downtown. Check them out. The Vols didn't do much, just for the record, in the transfer portal. In case you didn't know, we'll take a look. Is that good or bad for Tennessee? It is 4 downs. Brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
All right, here we go. Let's take a look at that transfer portal. Cooper, what should people do, sir?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Oh, thank you. What down?
Coop here. First down.
All right, Tennessee lost 15 players in the transfer portal. How does that compare to the rest of the SEC teams? I remind you, just stop by Dynasty Pools and Spas right off of I-75 in Athens. Ask for an Off the Hook Sports t-shirt or a Celebrate 98 book, and they'll hook you up. What do you got? Where does that rank among SEC players?
Sorry,
or SEC teams?
Tennessee, okay, with the transfer portal. Their transfer portal pickups, they had a total of 8 dating back to the offseason in December.
Well, let's stick with just what they lost. 15.
Oh, lost. Okay, sorry. Yes,
Okay.
they lost 15 dating back to December, dating back to the offseason. They lost 15. That is last in the SEC, fewest players lost in the SEC, Tennessee.
Fewest. It sounds like a lot. That surprises me. I almost thought it was a typo when we were talking about it.
No, they lost the fewest.
So it sounded like a lot at the time, but in retrospect, it's pretty good.
You lose a lot. You got to remember, you lose a lot of players in the portal because a lot of players who weren't starting just bolt. I mean, so it's common to lose a lot of players.
I mean, you're going to lose a half dozen a year, I think. Bare minimum. I don't care how good things are going.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
How many of those guys do you think Tennessee said, it'd be good if you just went ahead and cruised on out? Now, this is speculation before we get to some stuff we know. But how many? I'm going to go with 10.
I was going to go 13, but I think the only one they didn't was Tyler Barron.
Okay.
I think everybody else, they were like, yeah, you might want to go get cruise on out of here.
Okay. I will go with that. I was going to ask you next who would be the one guy that they didn't say that to, and it would be Tyler Barron. We both can agree with that. Now,
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. Third down. Tennessee picks up 8 players in the SEC portal. Where does that rank? I remind you to stop by Dynasty Pools and Spas and just ask for that free t-shirt or free book right off the Athens exit on I-75, Dynasty Pools and Spas. So picked up 8 players, and that's last in the SEC?
That is dead last in the SEC. They lost the fewest and picked up the fewest.
Okay. I thought you said last in the SEC when we were talking at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. I thought you said last in the SEC, or when it came to the spring portal, which would have been 0. But you mean last in the SEC as a whole. Can you give me a rundown of the other teams? Who's trying to completely rebuild? I think you can tell a lot by these teams.
I don't have the full number of the other teams. I apologize for that now. I can try to pull that up.
See if you can pull that up. Hit the like button and subscribe. You can still take part in our poll question that is on board. Would you be offended if Nico wore pajama bottoms on the ball walk? Yes, he should respect UT history. No, his play is all that matters. So where does that rank amongst other SEC teams? We'll tell you in just 1 minute. 4 downs, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. The best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready. Because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lift, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemish models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com. And just for stopping by, you get a Celebrate 98 book or a Off the Hook Sports t-shirt. Your choice. Just ask for Scott and say hello. Caleb, third down was, where does that rank among SEC teams? We know it's last. Who are the teams that
quick correction. I want to apologize to everybody.
Oh, okay.
It's next to last in the SEC. Last in the SEC in fewest departures. Second to last in fewest pickups, 8. LSU was the fewest at 7.
Okay, fair enough. So we know that those two teams are not trying to completely rebuild. They're further along in the rebuilding process. Who do we see at the top of those lists that are either losing people? Let's address both. Losing people, I'm going to guess Alabama, or trying to rebuild like crazy. And I'm going to guess Texas A&M.
Wow, Dave, you nailed it. Alabama was number 1 in the most players lost at 39. Well, they were number 1 in the most players. And then Texas A&M was number 1 in the most players added at 28.
And A&M was number 1 in players added. Well,
yeah,
I figured they'd have a lot of people that left, and they do have money, so I figured they'd be able to pull people in. With Alabama, though, I would have said a lot, and I would have said high 20s. 39. You only have 85 scholarship roster players.
And they only added 12. So that's a net loss of 27 players that they had in the portal.
Okay, I'm changing fourth down. May I change fourth down altogether?
Go ahead and change it.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
You'll enjoy this. Do these numbers prove that Alabama is just going to be terrible this year? I mean, maybe not this year, but 2-3 years down the line, can you survive? I don't care if Kalen DeBoer is the next Steve Spurrier. I don't care if Kalen DeBoer is whoever. Can you survive getting a roster gutted like this?
I don't think you can. I mean, it's one thing to lose and then pick up a lot of guys, but they lost a net 27 players. I mean, that's just insane. Now, let's be fair here.
It's bigger than a signing class. It's bigger than a signing class.
That is bigger than a signing class. You're right. Every school lost a net. Texas A&M was number 1 in the fewest. They lost a total. They lost 31 and picked up 28, meaning that's a net 3 losses, obviously. And Tennessee's was a net 7, but South Carolina's was a net -5. I don't really care about the net as much from most people, from most teams, because most of the players they lost, they don't care about. Most of the players they added, they care about. Alabama, that's not the case. They lost 39 players. They did not want to lose all 39 of those players. And they had, and they didn't have any withdrawals either. Now, this is the big deal. None of those players withdrew from the portal and returned to Alabama. And 29 have already found new homes. So they are just, I mean, I don't know how. The only thing you can maybe say that could keep them afloat, they were so loaded with talent because of Nick Saban's recruiting that they can still afford to field a competent team, and Kalen DeBoer is a good offensive coach.
I agree with that. So I think it's a short term, which is almost worse. You'd almost, I think, rather build in the way up. It creates optimism. All right, so with Alabama, could Nick Saban have overcome this? Because you didn't have the transfer portal in which guys could just jet. And he ran guys, don't get me wrong, but a net flip of 27, could Nick Saban? And then I want to get back to Tennessee, a question I have about Tennessee. But could he have survived that and won 7 championships at Alabama? I'm going to say no.
I think he could have. He effectively survived it his first year at Alabama, because I'm just going to say it. That was the most. Do you remember Simeon Castile?
No.
defensive player for Alabama when Nick Saban was there. Simon Castile was the anchor of the defense. Total diva, terrible for team chemistry. DJ Hall was the anchor for the offense at wide receiver.
Well, you
for
know,
Alabama.
my linebacker, the one I pointed out, was selling cocaine in the parking lot.
Well, that's what I
pretty
mean.
tough to talk.
Alabama lost a ton of players after that 2007 season, and Nick Saban was like, good riddance to all of you. And they all graduated. Half of them were supposed to be NFL draft caliber players and didn't get drafted. Remember, they sat there and Nick Saban had to deal with them getting free textbooks and breaking NCAA rules on that. Remember that?
Yes.
Yes,
I was in the press box when they handed out that was purely, they wanted to embarrass those kids too. That was purely a way of creating division among kids so they would leave and not serve out the red shirt year in some cases. Go back and look at the list of players.
Saban was behind embarrassing them?
Oh yeah, I've never had a press release handed out in the press box before saying that players ineligible. And
so Saban was
6 players, 6, 7, 8 players, however many it was, were ineligible. I do want to get back to
Tennessee. Saban wanted them gone. He wanted them out of there. That's what I mean. He was trying to push these guys out and trying to run out guys because they were the most. And now let's be fair here.
I don't think you ever want anybody gone. I think you want somebody to straighten up or be gone.
I think Nick Saban wanted these guys gone. He didn't. He had no respect for the players he inherited at Alabama. Because remember, that Alabama team was 6-7 the year before, and they probably were good enough to go 9-3, 10-2, but they went 7-6 because Nick Saban had such stringent rules and was trying to force guys off. To be fair to Mike Shula, the reason they had limited discipline was because Mike Shula's, his hands were tied in recruiting. He couldn't be selective the way Nick Saban could because of Alabama's probation. So he just took whoever he could.
Travis, another great point. His first year at Alabama, Saban lost bad players to Bohr is losing ballers. That is absolutely the case. I could not agree more. Fantastic point. This day.
No, he lost good players, but they were divas. He lost good players. They were just very, very, they were low character guys.
But as a whole, that roster wasn't even close to what it is now.
True, but it was better than 7-6, which is what he went in 2007. But he didn't mind going 7-6 because he was trying to force off guys.
Again, you just stop by on I-75, the Athens exit, go to Dynasty Pools and Spas, and you can ask for an Off the Hook Sports t-shirt or Celebrate 98 book just to say hello. Say, Scott, Off the Hook Sports sent me. This question, though, that I have for you, what does it say about Tennessee that they have a net turnover of blank? I'll let you do the math, but the least turnover of almost any team in the SEC. What does it say about Tennessee? Does it say Josh Heupel's happy, or the roster's that good, or a little bit of both? Because you and I have had questions about his talent evaluation at times. What does it say about Tennessee to be at that point? Brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas.
I think it says that Josh Heupel understands in the landscape of NIL and the transfer portal the intangible of chemistry and is a big deal, and experience is a bigger deal than it's ever been before. And I get, we have people who are on the show with us and they're, I get being prisoner of the last 10, 15 years, and you start to think just recruiting and talent wins out over everything else. But Dave, I think you're entering with NIL, you're having a renaissance in college sports where experience and chemistry outweighs talent sometimes. And this may be another topic for Monday, but I think Tennessee may be copying the Michigan model of this past year.
I don't think they're copying it. I don't think we'll get to that next week. Okay. But I don't think they're copying it. I think that's just the way the market has settled itself out. And I know what you're referring to, and I do want to get into that. Let's definitely do that next week. No question about it. I remind you that the show is represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Think about that. Other lawyers, I've known them. They don't want to go to trial because there's a reason they don't want to go to trial, because they typically lose money doing that. Not T. Scott Jones. He'll go to trial for you. That's Banks and Jones. We have this day in Tennessee football history in 60 seconds. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right, Caleb. What do you got for this day in Tennessee? This day in Vols sports history. Renamed it just now. This day in Vols sports history is what?
Like to send a very, very, very heartfelt happy birthday to a man named Willis Tucker. He is one of the 4 Vols who served in World War II and did not make it home. And so he's one of the 4 Vols whose jersey number is retired. He was an anchor of the 1940 national championship team. And there's a reason Tennessee is the volunteer state. And it's because of people like Willis Tucker who put his education and his career on hold to liberate Europe. And he was one of those who paid the ultimate price to do it.
It's very, very well said. Very well said. This day in Vols sports history is brought to you by our good friend, Jeff Newbert at Newbert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
How about coming up on the program, Danny White talks NIL. It's just a part of the equation. Kudos to him. I'll tell you why in one moment. And is it a warm take?
That's hot.
Wow. There we go. Stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Bronco, $59,829. 24 Ford Maverick, all-wheel drive, $28,540. 24 Ford Explorer, XLT four-wheel drive, $49,996. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Question by Lofton SR94 on the message board, which sounds like a great shooter, a fast plane, and you were born in 1994 all in one. In 2025, when Peely is gone, do you think T-Lander becomes the starter? I've kind of assumed that. Caleb, I think T-Lander is that good. You?
I think Thielander is, unfortunately for him, he's a very reliable player. I think Tennessee's going to recruit up at that position, though, once they start doing well pretty quickly.
Well, and to be clear, I think that he has to make a major step to be the type of player that goes into 2025 with a position locked down and a borderline superstar. You question linebackers' effort a lot, and I'm not questioning you, but I will tell you that a lot of times
I haven't questioned Thielander's or Herring's or any of their efforts though at linebacker on this team.
Okay, or ability. Effort's wrong word. Ability.
Yeah.
A lot of times it can look like that with uncertainty, which I'm not saying is the case as Thielander. Nobody's told me that, but he can look a little bit, you can look slower, be it effort or understanding or preparation or ability when you're uncertain. And I think
that's why Jeremy Banks was so god awful in pass coverage at linebacker. Uncertainty. And guess what? I feel very comfortable saying he wasn't the smartest player either.
Yeah, I could probably roll with that. He wasn't real smart before the Columbia collapse. Danny White had some NIL comments. Can you share those with us? Because I think they're incredibly insightful and a sign that the Vols are in prime position for the foreseeable future in the NIL realm. What did Danny White, Tennessee's athletic director, have to say?
Yeah, so this is actually a playoff when he was asked about Brian Kelly's comments with LSU when Brian Kelly was like, LSU doesn't buy players. No. And basically,
for the record, just saying this, LSU, it's chronicled, has bought players. I never understood that argument. Everybody's buying players. It's legal to buy players. It's like saying, don't drive 40 in this 45-mile-an-hour zone. I didn't understand his comments. That's why I think I'm a lot happier if I'm Tennessee fan hearing these comments than if I'm LSU fan yesterday. Go with Danny.
Yes, absolutely. Danny White didn't just defend NIL. He basically defended NIL buying players. He said, now you want players to commit for the coach and the professors. And, he said all that stuff. But then he said, quote, if we're offering NIL packages, and that's part of the equation, any one of us in our professional life would never take a job without knowing what the details of that compensation package looks like. So is it part of their decision? It has to be. It is for every other American in any other walk of life. That doesn't make them greedy or selfish. I think that's a piece of the puzzle. Okay. That is the most vociferous defense of athletes paying attention to NIL money that I've heard any athletic director or coach give.
It's more ahead of the curve than even you're giving it credit for. And let me tell you why. Brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off anything at hemphousechatwith2ts.com, hemphousechatwith2ts.com. It is not going to be the end-all, be-all as it was with Nico Iamaleava. It might be for one team, two teams that are trying to rebuild and they're pretty desperate. I told you, and I didn't know how it would settle, but this is the way NIL market has settled. The top teams are going to spend some on high school recruits, but that's not going to be where the majority of their money goes. So you still have to recruit. You're not just a negotiator as an assistant coach. So kudos to Danny White for saying that is part of the equation. And kudos for him realizing he can't completely rely on NIL to build a championship football team. It takes much, much more than writing a check. He's so far ahead of the curve with that statement. If I'm an athletic director at North Nevada University, I'm stealing it and using it for my own.
No, you're right. He's absolutely insanely ahead of the curve with this.
Because Caleb, the schools are going to have either you're an elite school or you're not. You're going to have about the same amount of money to spend as everybody else. Roughly, because there's probably eventually going to be a cap too.
Right. No, exactly. And guys, if you don't think the perception of a school or backing its players or the perception of states doesn't filter its way down to recruits, you're smoking something, because it always does.
Not right now. I'm not.
No, but that's what I mean. Like, okay, just to give you an example, and I'll give you guys an example. I have no respect for the man I'm about to speak on, because I think that everything he did with this moment was a fraud and fake and phony. And ask the player he was defending about it, and he'll tell you the same thing. Mike Gundy, Remember that whole rant? I'm a man. I'm 40. Come after me. All that.
Yeah, you can see right through that thing, just like Butch Jones, that was stepping up for his player. Yeah, it was. If you're about to say it looked orchestrated, then yes, it did.
It was 1,000% orchestrated. It was 1,000% fake. The player
So was Fulmer, though, when he would say, well, the offensive line didn't have a very good day in practice today. We'll see how they do tomorrow in the scrimmage. Then you'd come out and be like, I did pretty good in the scrimmage today. They listen. You know, they don't read the papers, but they listen to being called out. What? How did they hear about it then?
That's so true.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a little bit less orchestrated. Mike Gundy was bullying a 20-something-year-old female reporter for writing an accurate story, and he did it all on behalf of this player that he wanted to get out that he was defending. By the way, that player came out and said that was the fakest thing ever. He transferred out at the end of the year. He said he has no respect for Mike Gundy. He said it was so obviously orchestrated. But the narrative got out there that Mike Gundy's backing his players. So it helped Oklahoma State recruit for a few years, and it helped them be very good, and it helped them almost get to the national title game in 2011. By the way, they're lucky they didn't, because now they get to whine about not playing for it. But Dave, if they got to play LSU instead of Alabama that year, what do you think LSU would have done to Oklahoma State?
Yeah, that'd have been ugly. I don't think they've ever had a championship caliber team. Maybe a team that could make a weaker 4-team playoff, or a weaker pair of teams that are in the championship game before the playoff. But getting back to Tennessee just a little bit here. Every school is going to have the same amount of money. Nobody's going to walk in and lay down that $2 million check for Nico. Sorry, Tennessee was ahead of the curve. It makes me think of Jay-Z on to the next one. It really does. Because they relied on NIL, not just, I mean, let's face it, the $2 million a year spent on Nico Iamaleava is worth it, even if he is average. And I say that because of the promotion that they got, that they were relevant, that they were then pushed around by the NCAA, so they fought back, and that was important. And they did that, and they won. So he's worth it, even if he's an average quarterback. So you may have to go get another quarterback. It may be McIntyre. Well, I'm betting you didn't promise George McIntyre, the young man, is at 2025. He'll come in. So McIntyre out of Nashville. I bet you didn't offer him $2 million a year. You know what I bet you offered him? A reasonable salary, which everybody gets as part of the Spire Group, a chance to play for his in-state home school, a good education, the same things you sold in recruiting. So Danny White, you nailed it. It's part of the equation. It's not the equation. Now, if Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss and they have to completely rebuild, maybe somebody like that makes a splash higher again. But I don't see that happening unless you're in total rebuild mode. And if you're that, you're probably not a very good program in the first place. Caleb?
You are 18,000% correct. And for those who don't know the song, on to the next one is some of the greatest life advice you'll ever get, because it's always saying you got to keep it moving. The people who relax in neutral because they're successful are the ones who always fall behind. And he was talking about artists, but in sports, it's the same thing. Dave, what made Tennessee so successful for so long? They always kept it moving. Okay? Tennessee, with Robert Nealon, was ahead of the curve in every single type of philosophy possible for football. I'm going to do a video on this one day. Robert Nealon introduced the phone to the press box. He was the first coach to do that. He introduced the lighter jerseys, the tearaway jerseys. Yeah, no, Robert Nealon actually introduced the phone to the press box and introduced film study. He was an MIT grad. He understood engineering, and he designed Neyland Stadium to allow for more communication among coaches that no other stadium had at that time. Then Tennessee, what do? They do the T for they move from the single wing to the slot T under Doug Dickey. They do running through the T. They introduce these new traditions. They become the first school to integrate in the SEC significantly. Kentucky did technically first, but Tennessee did it to a higher level. And then in the 70s, they embraced Title IX, which props up women's basketball. And then in the 80s and the 90s, they're the school that really cashes in on national TV games, realizing let's play these non-conference games. Why did they fall off in the 2000s, guys? Because You know this, Dave. Didn't there come a semblance of, we're Tennessee. We don't have to do anything. So we'll just sit and watch the recruits come and the wins will come with it. And that's what they thought, didn't they?
Some of that. I thought there was some of that towards the end of Philip Fulmer's career as well. I want to go to the message board, and we have a new poll question that we want to get out to you. But Smoky Mountain Red says, I will say it 1,000 times. After all the years of BS coaches and some leadership, it blew my mind that we were that ready for NIL. Elias says, it's been a sea change in Knoxville. Elias says, minor miracle. Are you not a little bit stunned? We're talking about how well Tennessee has handled NIL and the transfer portal. I mean, given they couldn't even hire a football coach that was competent for the longest time, but now they're suddenly managing roster movement that includes unprecedented rule changes, and they're handling that. What the hell? I mean, how did that happen?
A lot of this is luck, the timing. They hired an athletic director who's ahead of the curve at the exact same time NIL went into effect, and NIL was always going to benefit Tennessee more than other schools because of the money they have. So it was just a perfect storm. And then also, lastly, I'm really going to kill some of our endorsements and sales, but I'll just say it. Tennessee decided that part of it's nixing the Greg Schiano hire. Tennessee broke free from Jimmy Haslam's reign of terror on that program. It was a reign of incompetence, which led to a reign of terror. And they finally decided, we're not going to make moves based on what this failure has forced us to do over the past 10 years. That's what happened.
Okay, do me a favor and take 1 second and hit that like and subscribe button. Okay, go ahead and hit that like button because a great percentage of you have not done that yet. And you can also share if you're listening on Twitter. We greatly appreciate that. Go ahead and do that right now. And when I look at Tennessee and I look at the future, there was a part of me that thought that it was just NIL, that's all that could save them, and it was a short-term fix. I don't think that at all anymore. Hit that like button again. Subscribe if you haven't. And I remind you, we would love for you to join Hooker's Corner, which you can do right there. I'm going to put my link to Hooker's Corner in the page, and you can be a part of a unique connection with me and Caleb Calhoun. Also increased recruiting. How about that? Increased recruiting coverage, and we will have special prizes we'll give away each Friday. So we got a prize coming up this just in less than an hour or so. So be sure and stay tuned for that, and a grand prize thanks to our friends at Sports Treasures. And we love Sports Treasures. Caleb, bring yourself back up. Sports Treasures is our friend with over 5 million sports treasures. That's a lot of sports treasures and so much more. Follow them on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. They are simply awesome. Daily updates as well. Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. Last poll question just ended completely 50-50, which means great job, Caleb Calhoun. That's what we want. What was the last poll question?
If Nico Iamaleava wore pajama pants, would you be offended? And it was 50%. Yes, you have to respect UT history. And then other 50% was no, just go win, baby. And
okay, now, yeah. So that led me to a new poll question. What is the new poll question?
The new poll question, and I love this one. Who will be the first to criticize Nico's pajama pants? Guys, please don't age shame me because I know 3 of the 4. And that would be Nick Saban, Pat McAfee, Reese Davis, and the late Beano Cook.
Beano Cook was the guy that they used to always have on. And he was old for even me. But he was always the traditionalist. He always picked Notre Dame to win a national championship, and they'd have him on towards the end of every show, kind of like Lou Holtz. You remember Lou Holtz was kind of at the end, and they just kind of throw him on a show. So I know.
Him and Mark May together.
It was very much like that. Who remembers Beano Cook? Am I too old? So out of that group, which would you pick? Who will be the first to make fun of in a negative fashion? Because I think Pat McAfee will say, I love the pajama pants, just like was said on our message board. But who in a negative fashion will make fun of the pajama pants at some point?
Oh, they got it right. The plurality of Tennessee fans have it right, and it's Reese Davis at 35%. Reese Davis has some utter disdain for Tennessee that I don't get, quite honestly. And I'm not one of those people that's like national media hates the Vols or whatever, but there are certain, is it safe to say there are certain members of the national media who weirdly hate Tennessee? And by the way, I don't want to say that's a lot of schools. National members of the media all have schools they have vendettas against and all have schools they like. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And
absolutely.
And I think for a couple of them, Tennessee is one of the ones they have a vendetta against, and Reese Davis has a vendetta against Tennessee. So I think Reese Davis will definitely be the first one to do it.
Bino Cook predicted Tennessee to win the national title in their preseason poll in the 1983 Sport magazine.
Well, they almost did. They were very close to winning the national title that year. They ended up going 9-3 and had 2 upset losses to Ole Miss and Pittsburgh, but that was a very good team. That team had Reggie White senior year. So
Elias says Bino Cook is delivering grumpy Heaven Edition game day monologues. I did get a kick out of it. Yeah, he's somewhere right now. Well, I'll tell you, the Saints aren't nearly good enough to beat the Sinners concisively, so they better come out there and play their best. Blah, blah, Notre Dame. That's basically how his interviews went. They were fantastic. And there were Leonard's losers as well. Bino Cook was a Johnny Majors fan. That he was. And there weren't a lot of people in the coaching community that were Johnny Majors fans. I will tell you that.
Well, a lot of the media was, though.
A lot of the media was. Yeah, he was very friendly to deal with, great to deal with. So,
I mean, you tell me, Dave, in 92, when he was publicly lambasting the boosters and saying he deserves a bigger contract, everything I guess Jamie and John would be better to talk about this, but all the vibes I'm getting is everybody sided with him on that, didn't they? Everybody sided with him against the boosters, didn't they?
With Fulmer against the boosters?
No, everybody sided with Johnny Majors against the boosters. My read on this is
publicly, yes.
The media sided with Johnny Majors, and it seemed like the coaches, Johnny Majors' assistants, sided with Philip Fulmer.
Well, I would say the public sided with Johnny Majors. There was about 20-30% of the public that made considerable donations. Well, let's say 10 to 20, that they didn't like Johnny Majors a lot, and some personal settings that went awry. And
quite honestly, because Johnny Majors wasn't going to kiss you know what to boosters, was he?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. FanDuel. I owe you an apology, Tennessee fans. The Vols win total has gone up by a game from 8.5 to 9.5. This was an absolute lock. I'm sorry I didn't tell you beforehand. See if you can find it at 8.5 somewhere else. I believe that's what it was in 2023, and I told you that was an easy pick. And 2022, I believe it was 8.5 or 9.5. I believe it's 8.5. And I told you that was an easy pick. Is this an easy pick, Caleb? I don't generally believe in long-term gambling strategies.
This is an easy pick because of the schedule. This is an easy pick. It's not as easy as 8.5. And by the way, you don't owe anybody an apology. Me and you, Dave, I checked the video clip because it's up on YouTube now from February when FanDuel first came out. We told everybody to bet on it. We said it. We told everybody listening, put money on this now. And if y'all didn't do it, that's on y'all because we told y'all. We gave you great financial advice for your life. And
we do.
We told you to bet your entire life savings on that 8.5. And if you didn't, that's your fault. You just lost a lot of money. But 9.5.
9.5, does 9.5 give you pause? You picked Tennessee to win it all. Ultimately, do you think they'll lose a regular season game or two, which they can with the playoff now?
I think they'll lose a regular season game. 9.5 gives me pause. Look, I'm predicting they're going to win more than 9.5 games, but it's not a lock bet. Put it this way, Dave. Pretend this is a jury, and if it's a civil court, I'm betting the over 9.5. But if it's a criminal court where you got to go beyond a reasonable doubt, I'm probably not going to bet the over 9.5 because they're not going to win 10 games beyond a reasonable doubt. They were going to win more than 8 games beyond a reasonable doubt this year. Okay.
Travis said, you told us. I put money on it a few weeks ago at 8.5. Also put money on us making playoffs also to win plus 3,500. Can you still get odds on that? Will you look that up real quick? And Travis, if that's the case, and I'm making you that much money, do me a favor and stop by and see our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Free shirt, free book just for stopping by and telling Scott Off the Hook Sports sent you. The best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready, because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lift, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemish models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com. What are Tennessee's odds to make the college football playoff? Please hit the like button real quick for me and subscribe if you have not. What are the odds now to make the college football playoff?
They're at plus 3,000. Well, that's national championship. College football playoff on FanDuel, Tennessee is at plus 172 to make the college football playoff. They're at plus 3,000 to win the national title on FanDuel. And my favorite bet, Nico Iamaleava, guys, y'all missed out. He's up to plus 1,500 to win the Heisman. He was at plus like 5,000 back in January. Why is Vegas moving towards Tennessee is the question, because they're everywhere's moving towards Tennessee.
That's what I want to ask, because Vegas doesn't do anything by accident. Now, you could say that Tennessee's betting line moves a lot because of the number of people that bet on Tennessee, right? It's a big gambling community among their fan base, more so than a lot of other schools. Other schools would be like Notre Dame can move a line, Texas can move a line. There are a few schools out there that can move a line. With Tennessee betting heavy on either of those bets you just gave us, not Nico, but the other two, would that have moved the line to 9.5 and then a plus 3,000? Because Travis is telling us that winning a national title was plus 3,500 before. So you're right. Vegas likes Tennessee more than they did just a few weeks ago.
I'll tell you this. It could be two things. It could be Tennessee moving the line because Tennessee fans, it's a heavy betting community. It could also be this, Dave. Look, I don't care what anybody says. They're like, oh, these bookies, they don't have insiders everywhere. They're not supposed to do that with these schools. They got insiders everywhere.
Yeah, that's what it is.
They got them everywhere. And I'll tell you this. It actually goes to a segment we just talked about. They are reacting to Tennessee's transfer portal activity the exact opposite way from how national media is reacting. National media is going, Tennessee didn't add enough talent in the transfer portal. They're in trouble. Vegas insiders are saying Tennessee retained all their key talent. They're in great shape.
I think there's a bunch of little things and one big thing. I think that the people, and you're right. I talked to somebody in the SEC. Vegas has spies in every school. You go to a manager who's maybe just getting a school paid for, or maybe making $20,000 a year, and you say, "Hey, I'll give you $25,000 this year if you just give me a little bit of information." That is happening. I mean, happening like as we speak. Whenever you're watching this, it replays 1,000,000 times. It's happening right now. So, I think there are a bunch of little things like they saw the offensive line was going to be good, but thin. They saw the defensive backs were going to be more athletic. They saw the guys that returned. These are all things that have changed since that original number came out. The biggest thing is that they've seen Nico can sling it in spring practice. The guys that are inside that team and that show up to practice, they know that he can sling it. It's what I've been telling you for over a year. He is that good. That's what it takes to move a line a point. It takes a quarterback being a lot better or a lot worse than you thought he would be. He showed up and he's been everything advertised.
That's a very good point. Here's my only question. They originally set this line in February. Why would they move it based on what they saw from Nico in spring practice and not what they saw in Nico in the Citrus Bowl when he was so incredibly good in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa? I feel like somebody from Vegas, I feel like they lost their spy that day and he didn't show up for work.
Well, no, wait. I think that's where the line was set.
No, the line was set at.
Well, no, because of him, they saw 8.5. If it had been Milton's last game and no Nico, and let's even say Merklinger played, or anything else would have happened other than what would have happened, maybe they would be put at 7.5. 8.5 is what they came up with originally. My curiosity is why it's moving towards Tennessee now.
So they think, I mean, like, I agree.
No Nico, they would have Tennessee probably at 7.5, wouldn't they?
But, well, how would spring practice make them any higher on Nico than they already should have been after what they watched in the Citrus Bowl? I guess is my question. Like, did he wow that much in spring practice where it was like, he's even better than what we saw against Iowa?
Dial it back 365. What did you see out of Joe Milton in the Orange Bowl, and what did you get?
That's true. So you're saying they don't want to overreact to the Bulls.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Especially against a slow defense and a team with a lot of question marks despite their ranking. I think it's as simple as that. I really do.
And for those asking, it was 9.5 last year too, going into the season. So they missed it by half a game. And maybe that's what it was, right? They don't want to overreact again to a bowl performance because they did overreact to Milton's bowl performance last year. It was 7.5. You were right. Entering 20.
They missed it by half a game, but that's really not missing. If you can get people to bet evenly on both sides, you're making the juice. So to me, that's the perfect number.
Right.
If you go 9.5.
No, you're right. That's true. That's true. But they went under. And Milton, with Milton, they underperformed it. And I think also Milton plays extremely well in practice too. So the year before it was 7.5. That's where they really missed Tennessee. They missed them badly in 2022. It was 7.5. I said that was easy money then too. I didn't think Tennessee was going to go 11-2. I'm not going to pretend I saw that coming. I saw a 5-0 start coming though. I predicted a 5-0 start that year. And I said, and you know this, Dave, and here's how it's going to go this year. And this is what's so big. Don't red hot starts kind of make teams better as the year goes on because they can give them more confidence, like, oh, we're actually good, we can do this. And
do we answer that question really easily?
Yeah.
Depends if you have Josh Heupel or Jerry Green. With Jerry Green, the pressure continues to mount and you feel as if something bad's about to happen. With Josh Heupel, the excitement continues to mount and you feel like something good's about to happen.
Yes, that's a great
coaching.
point. You're right.
That's the difference. And really, I noticed this with some of the media, and I didn't point it out to anybody, but I almost shot somebody a text. 2 years ago, they kept asking a question, and it was, how do you handle the continued pressure that adds up with every single win? Now that you've beaten Florida, now that you've beaten Alabama. Well, you're supposed to have to deal with wins. I mean, that's why you play the game. Yeah. I mean, and it got to be this weird narrative of how do you handle the pressure? There shouldn't be pressure. There should be excitement.
Well, exactly. And so, Dave, put it this way. We all remember that big game 2 years ago was the Pitt game where they won in overtime. They were a significantly better team than Pitt. Like, that was an ugly win that they got. Say they lose that game. Let's just play a little bit of histrionics real quick. Say they lose that game. I don't think they beat Alabama if they lost to Pitt. Do you? I think mentally they wouldn't be in the right place to beat Alabama.
Yes, totally agree with that. And Cooper Mays echoes your very sentiment. He didn't say specifically they don't beat Alabama, but he said that brought the team together in a lot of different ways. That was kind of the belief moment. If not, it was Missouri the year before for the offense, but that was kind of the belief moment he thought for the entire team.
Because it showed a culture of winning. They made every mistake possible to lose that game, and they said, we're supposed to win this game. And I do think wins, with Heupel, it's a snowball. The more you win, the more you expect to win, the more confidence you get, because they go from Pitt to beating Florida. And you remember, they played a little sloppy against Florida too. Then they have a bye, and they just beat the brakes off LSU. And I think beating the brakes off LSU, which, by the way, for people that were debating me yesterday because I said Heupel has questions on the road, that LSU game does not count as a road game. Baton Rouge is not a road game at noon or at 11 a.m. It's not. I've been to Baton Rouge at 11 a.m. Their fans are all hungover.
We've discussed that. Can I ask a dumb gambling question?
Sure.
Could they make the odds more open to get people to gamble early on and then adjust them more as they see fit? In other words, was 8.5 just throwing a fishing hook out there to try to get some people who wanted early action?
No, because that might have been a thing 2 years ago, but because FanDuel's been in Tennessee because gambling's been in Tennessee for so long now, Tennessee gamblers are a little more seasoned than a lot of other places.
So is it more seasoned to place your bet as early as possible, or is it more seasoned to wait and see what happens, let's say, in the spring or the summer?
I think it's more effective. You place your bets in. If you know the team, you place your bets in February. You do it then. That's where you're going to get your best odds. It's that you place your bets early because that they're going to get things wrong. Put it this way. Vegas has insiders. They are not as tied in. They can't be as tied in as the people who actually cover the team as beat reporters. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
You know, Dave, when you were at the Knoxville News Sentinel and covering Tennessee every day, you knew more about Tennessee than Vegas ever could when they were setting the line.
Yes, but I will tell you this. I didn't know more than the managers knew.
That's true. That's a fair point. You're right. That's a fair point.
Those are the easy ones. I mean, you don't have to go get Nico to be your source. You have to get a manager. Probably wouldn't even get you in trouble. Probably happy because you don't have to pay him. I'm just and listen, he's not affected. He can't affect the game. I guess. I don't know. I guess he could take out the communications and Nico's helmet with the press box that they're doing this year, but you can't. I mean, you can't.
I've said this for a while. This is crazy. I think there should be. I don't know if I'm actually more for. I don't believe that there should be 12 people doing a rankings. I actually think a formula should be in place. I don't know if you believe in a computer formula, or I think mathematical formulas are more effective than.
I completely agree with that. I can't believe it. I mean, we're probably the only ones in sports media that would be on together that would agree with that. But yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think part of the model, and I'm dead serious about this, part of the model should include schedule strength, and schedule strength shouldn't be based on record. I think, Dave, it should actually be based on Vegas odds. That's how they should set schedule strength. Like how many teams would the teams that you played be favored against in a year? I think schedule strength should be. I don't think Vegas odds should be determined to determine the 12 best teams because what you do on the field matters. But I do think it should be used in schedule strength.
You're going to a weird place there. Because then what's next? Did they do the AP poll? Do they do? I mean, there's
Vegas is so much more effective than the AP poll, though. Vegas doesn't get fooled. Vegas does not get fooled.
You know, I'm going to get a little sentimental on that because there are a lot of sports writers who, over the years, have spent 2 or 3 hours on a Sunday morning to get those things in. I've never agreed to be an AP voter, and I never will. Now, there are other ones who don't care and they just fill it out. Do I think Vegas would do a better job with those things? Yeah. Do I think? But here's the problem with Vegas. Vegas knows so well that if they did a Heisman Power poll, you'd know who's going to win it the day before, which I guess we do anyway, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't get everything.
When's the last time we've been surprised by a Heisman winner? Surely it's not 97 with Peyton. I mean, when's the last time a Heisman
I was pretty shocked when Carson Palmer beat Willis McGahee in 2002. I thought that was a travesty. Willis McGahee should have won that Heisman in 2002.
But still, that's how many years? That's 20 years. So there's not.
No, you're right. We're never surprised. I mean, but we're never really surprised by like MVPs in pro sports either anymore. I think it just becomes obvious. There's debate, but by the way, NBA, everybody mad. Nikola Jokic deserved MVP over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Sorry, I just wanted to point that out.
Great point. Heupel and Beamer were the only coaches that didn't. Good point, Smoky Mountain Red. Didn't have to replace an OC or defensive coordinator in the offseason. A little bit of stability. Tennessee loses 2 coaches, but you don't want to lose a coordinator.
Yeah, wow. Shane Beamer kept Dowell Loggins. I'm so impressed. The worst offensive coordinator in the SEC. Wow. Congratulations, man. See, that is a classic case of
pull some South Carolina odds on winning the national championship. Smoky Mountain.
I don't think they're not listed. FanDuel's not listing them. No. By the way, I love that's one of those things where it's like, I do believe in returning players and talent if there's potential there. But like returning guys only matters if those guys are not terrible, right? Like, you don't want to have the worst quarterback of all time. You're like, I got the worst quarterback of all time coming back this year. We're going to be great because we're returning a starter.
In 2 minutes, we begin our countdown of the most important balls in the offseason. Also, why freshmen might not get NIL. Well, then than being illegal, that should be great. We're live each and every weekday on YouTube and in the podcast wherever you stream. So we love you to take part of the program each and every weekday at 10 a.m. John Adams, nice enough to join us every Tuesday, and his appearance is brought to you by our good friends at Newbert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
An offensive lineman makes the list of the most important balls for this upcoming season coming out of spring practice. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out, Jimmy Himes has a great piece on Tennessee's talent compared to 2022. Josh Heupel says it's better. Not so sure. Jimmy's appearance on Wednesday brought to you by our good friend Ray Varner at Ray Varner Ford.
Bronco, 59,829. 24 Ford Maverick, all-wheel drive, 28,540. 24 Ford Explorer, XLT four-wheel drive, 49,996. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, look at that picture right there, because you get to choose one of those prizes other than the flag if you join Hooker's Corner, just $9.98 a month. We would love for you to be a part of that interaction with me and Caleb as well. And first-time prizes include selecting from one of those prizes as well from our good friends at Apex Apparel. Plus, we will take care of you with a Celebrate 98 book. So join now, just $9.98. And we have recruiting coverage on there that'll absolutely blow you away. For instance, up this morning, Tennessee nearing huge 4-star wide receiver commitment decision. You can check him out on Hooker's Corner. We greatly appreciate you doing that. Also, want to remind everyone that you can go to TriStarHatsCo.com to order the best TriStar Hats memorabilia, the official TriStarHatsCo.com. So certainly check that out. Use the promo code HOOKED to get free shipping. HOOKED to get free shipping. TriStarHatsCo.com. sportsfreshers.com. Getting back to Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. It's been a big show on tap. We're going to visit with Spencer Riley to talk about putting together an offensive line and Tennessee's returning players and what he expects out of a guy like Lance Hurd, who just transfers in as a 19-year-old. We forget about that. But first, we'll talk about an idiot. He coaches at Boise State. He says freshmen shouldn't receive NIL money. Dabo Sweeney quietly says, you're absolutely right. They don't deserve anything. Dabo Sweeney publicly says, thank God nobody's talking about me and my stupidity with NIL. Wow. No NIL for freshmen. How do you recruit when you say that?
I mean, I guess the only thing you could possibly say is that Boise State doesn't recruit anyway, but doesn't recruit well anyway. But this is, for the record, Spencer Danielson is our age, the new Boise State head coach. He's been at Boise State since 2017 as an assistant in different ways. He went to college at San Diego for a year. I think he Jim Harbaugh would have already been at Stanford at that point. Then went to Azusa Pacific, was a linebacker, and got promoted to head coach in 2023. This is beyond mind-boggling that he would say this, particularly when he's only been with the team. He was the interim coach last year and finished 3-1, and then became the head coach this year. And your first thing as full-time head coach, one of your first acts is to say freshmen won't get NIL money. That is beyond ridiculous. And here's why I think it's insane.
I'm going to give you the ultimate reason why it's insane in a second, but go ahead with this reason.
Well, one of the things I had said for a while that NIL would do is I actually made the argument that it would bring more parity to college football, not less, because college football before then was totally based on the conference and the recruiting fertile ground you are. And the more factors you have in college football, the more parity you have. And I thought NIL was going to allow smaller schools to not build like a national championship team, but to allow for maybe 2 or 3 players to say, hey, why don't you want to stay home and play for your hometown? We can cobble up some money and get you to stay. I mean, I can just say, being from Memphis, I think that could be a worry for Tennessee, because the Amari Thomases in the future, maybe the Tigers go to the Amari Thomases and say, hey, you want to make a lot of money and stay home and play for Memphis and represent and play with a few other high school teammates and, all your family and friends in the stadium. And FedEx could write enough checks to keep 2 or 3 guys that would otherwise go to Tennessee. Boise State would be on that level. This absolutely nukes that idea, though, for them.
Okay. All that you said is true. And he should be very worried about what he said, but for a different reason. Are you ready?
Yep.
It's illegal. You can't say that. The NCAA has already lost the lawsuit on multiple occasions. It's illegal. They could literally, based off that comment, open an investigation against him. This is how much has changed. It's not going back. It's illegal.
Well, here's why it wouldn't be. And this is why it'd be a little tricky. The reason it was illegal for the NCAA was because they ran all of college football. So it was an antitrust lawsuit.
Polluted, so to speak. Yes.
Boise State, if Boise State's not going to do this, they can't file an antitrust suit against Boise State because Boise State would be like, well, they can go play for somewhere else. We're not making them come play for us. So that's why it wouldn't be as illegal. Now, I want to come out. Spencer Danielson has officially clarified his comments. And he said, we're not putting a strict...
Will you agree with me to say that the mindset is illegal? Or
Yes. It is I hate to say this, but for a certain contingency of people, it almost brings back, these kids are on scholarship and things like that, but doesn't it almost bring back like a Confederate, almost slave philosophy of no, these players belong to us and they should play for us almost, you know what I mean?
Well, Lord, that's been there for the last 125 years. Where you been? This is the most minor example I could think of that, but it's one of about a million.
Yeah. So Spencer Danielson, the head coach, he now says that okay, there won't be a strict embargo, but we're not going to allow anybody to promise or offer NIL deals to recruits. That is your pipeline that's how that is how, as a smaller school or as a non-Power 5 school, that's how you build a team that can maybe compete with the Power 5 program every now and then. You convince a few kids that are on the recruiting trail, hey, want to come play for this school where you'll be beloved and we can offer you just enough NIL money? Boise State. Okay, now I say Boise State. Idaho is not like, okay, a Louisville, Cincinnati, or Memphis, or a place like that's a smaller school, but is in a more fertile recruiting ground. Nobody's in Idaho. Who's the last recruit to come out of Idaho that you ever heard about, Dave? I don't think it exists. But at the same time, I do think they could maybe couldn't Boise State go into California, get a few elite kids and say, hey, you want to come play on some blue turf, be beloved in a small town, and here's some extra bucks. And also you could promise them this. You're choosing between USC and Boise State. Your NIL money is going to go a lot further in Boise than it is in USC, isn't it?
Yeah, beautiful town too. Beautiful. That's one of the probably 5 places I would live. I would choose to live there. It's gorgeous. It's funny to me, and I see it as C. Scott guy, and we're going to mention this right now. It's funny to me how some people are on one end of the spectrum and others are on the other end of the spectrum. So apparently, if you can help me look this up, there has been a law passed in South Carolina with NIL that it approves updated NIL bill to allow more cooperation between schools and athletes. So good job, South Carolina. You did good for your football team. Tennessee, do the same thing. Whoever the legislators are, let's go ahead and do the same thing, because that's what Missouri did and Eli Drinkwitz did when they landed the 5-star, seems like his name was Ngawa, maybe, defensive lineman instead of Tennessee. It was because Eli Drinkwitz was able to be in on those negotiations. Now that appears to be the case at South Carolina. Doesn't that just seem normal? Like if you were going to buy your wife a car, which not to be 1950-ish, but a lot of time guys go take, they handle the car buying. Wouldn't you at least take your wife to see what they thought about the car? I mean, right now, the NIL has to depend on a phone call. But what if the kid says, listen, I need $100,000 more, and I'm taking a call from Kirby Smart, and I'm sick of this, and I want to make my decision. Then why in the world isn't Josh Heupel allowed to be in that room?
I totally agree. He should be. He should be. And by the way, now here's where it gets dicey. At that point, and this is why Title IX has to be updated. Again, this is the problem with the letter of the law with Congress is a law's on the books until it's repealed or reformed. And I mean, that's the way it should be, to be fair. But antitrust law came into place in 1890. Title IX came into place in 1972. Do you think Congress ever thought these two things would ever conflict with each other? Title IX and antitrust laws. Do you think they ever thought that would conflict?
Well, no. Nobody ever dreamed that college football or the NFL would pass at the time horse racing, prize boxing, and baseball as the most popular sports.
That is very true. That is so very true. Prize fighting killed itself. You know that with boxing and the promoters and the things they did.
I'll give them credit though; they hung on for a long time.
Well, the promoters and the boxers are still making even more money now.
That's right.
But where I'm going at is there can be a Title IX lawsuit if a coach or a member of a football program is involved in NIL transactions, because then they could say you're using university resources for things that benefit football players that don't benefit softball players. Now, the response to that is, I'm sorry, guys, I'm just going to say it. I've seen the facilities at Tennessee, Dave. I've seen the facilities at other schools. The idea that before NIL, the idea that football players weren't getting more than softball players was laughable. Like, you saw, they both had an athletic scholarship, but football players had much better food selection and usually stayed in much better dorms, didn't they?
Yes. I applied to stay in the Gibb dorm, and I did not get in there. Only about 10% were non-athletes. You couldn't call it a football facility at the time. You couldn't call it an athlete's dorm, but that's essentially what it was.
Exactly. And so, but remember, they put up the facade that the football players and the softball players are getting the same stuff. they're not getting the same stuff, though, are they? The football players and the softball players are not getting the same things at all. And that's where
better be careful with the facilities usage. I think there's probably somebody overlooking, hey, the football team's taking up the indoor practice facility but now they have 2. I mean, they got so much space. They're good. Everybody can practice at the same damn time. You know, everybody just run out there and hold one big practice. I tell you, he is practicing. Javontez Spraggins was beat up a little bit during spring camp and was somewhat limited. I don't think that's any major concern. Why? Because Javontez Spraggins is our 10th most important ball after spring camp. We'll count them down day in and day out, but Spraggins is number 10 for 2 reasons. He's a proven commodity with 37 career starts, mostly at right guard, where he only allowed 2 sacks in 699 offensive plays that he took part in last season. That's pretty strong. Spraggins gets overlooked, but he's one of the top 10 most important players heading into the 2024 season and summer workouts. Caleb?
Javontez Spraggins is a crucially important player for Tennessee. For those who question Josh Heupel's offense, and we repeat this all the time, but it's worth repeating again. This offense is nothing without the elite vertical rushing attack. Josh Heupel actually doesn't want to throw it that much. As a matter of fact, his best year record-wise was that first year at UCF. He ran it twice as much as he ran it 45 times a game and threw it 30 times a game. That's the ratio he wants. He does. If Tennessee's throwing the ball more than they're running the ball in a season, they're in trouble. That's actually a big problem. They want to run it more than they throw it. They just want the passes to be there.
You know, the other thing I find incredibly interesting about Tennessee's offensive line is they can get by with lighter tackles. Now I think we're seeing Herd. They want the big guys. You always want the bigger guys that are the same speed and athletic as the younger guys. You always want the bigger guys if you have the choice, but they've been able to get by with some smaller offensive tackles. Now their tackles are getting bigger, and I wonder if they'll be even more run-based. Is that possible with this offense and what we know about it and what we know about what Josh Heupel likes to do? Because Spraggins, to me, is a run-block type of offensive lineman.
Well, that's where I was getting at. Yes. So Spraggins is what makes the run game go for Tennessee. Spraggins is the big reason it goes, and it starts and ends with Spraggins, and that's what makes it so crucial. I mean, we've been critical of Joe Milton, and oftentimes rightly so, but part of their step back last year had a lot to do with Spraggins getting hurt at the end of the year. And I think Spraggins, he really clears the way for the run game. Guys, I told you Tennessee just needs bodies at running back for the most part, because that vertical rushing game is going to be there because of the interior blocking. Spraggins is the most important interior run blocker on the field. And quite honestly, he's an all SEC caliber guy. Massive. I think Javontez Spraggins, experienced. A guy, by the way, more credit where credit's due. Jeremy Pruitt found him out of nowhere coming out of Illinois. And this is another one of those guys. Again, you guys can say whatever you want about Jeremy Pruitt, and I get it, but that dude evaluated talent better than any coach Tennessee football's ever had.
Here's another reason why Spraggins is so important this year, and it's brought to you by Boundless Moving. From the 2-hour minimum to turnkey operations, they've got you covered. That's Boundless Moving in East Tennessee or in Charlotte. Boundless Moving. Other reason is because everybody's hoping Peyton Lewis is great. Everybody's hoping Cam Seldon is great, but we don't know that yet. I think we all like Dylan Sampson, but because of his size, he's limited in the times he can touch the ball. So I think to have a big push up front would make a big difference in Tennessee's ability to run the ball if they don't have a special tailback. And they might, but as of right now, we don't know.
Yes, that's very true. That's a big part of it. Really, the only question becomes with tailback, do you have vision or can you pick up pass pro? You don't have to be that athletic or shifty. The holes are going to be there to pretty easily hit. So there's not a lot of agility you necessarily need. You just need vision and be able to pick up pass pro. And Spraggins is going to be a huge part of that. Now, I mean, we'll talk about Cooper Mays later down the road when we do this. Obviously,
he's going to rank pretty high. Spraggins is number 10.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, Cooper. I don't think, and I know people are like, oh, I don't think I shocked anybody with the fact that Cooper Mays is going to be on this list. So that's why I didn't feel bad mentioning him. But that'll also be a crucial part of the run blocking too. But Spraggins is the key run blocker that makes things go and also takes advantage of a lot of the downfield blocking that's allowed in college football now. And because you're right, he is another. I mean, Tennessee's offensive line has size, but they're very agile for their size, and Spraggins fits that perfectly. So I think Javontez Spraggins is and he's just so experienced. I think Tennessee is going to I think they're going to thrive if he can stay healthy. And if that run game goes, and Dave, you know this, pick up 5 yards on the ground. You pick up 5 yards, then the passing plays are going to be there in this offense.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Travis compares Jerome Bettis to Khalifa Keith. That's quite a comparison. Khalifa Keith, from what I've heard, has changed into talking to people around and within the program. Has kind of changed from one of those fullback types that could do what Princeton Fant did to a guy that may actually be a real running back. That is
really,
yeah, that's a positive. I don't think it's done yet. And I don't think you're talking about a feature back of Lewis or Selden's stature, but I think you're talking about a back that can do it. If Tennessee has 4 average backs, and let's say Sampson's average because he can only touch the ball, 16, 18 times because of his size. So you got these 4 backs, the other 3 of which prove to be average, not carry limits, but Sampson has that. Is this a good, great, or elite running game, or average? If all the running backs prove to be fairly average, can the offensive line make up for it? I guess is the convoluted question I was trying to ask you.
On the right side, they absolutely can. Now there's a question at left guard, but Mays and Spraggins together can absolutely make up for an average run game. They can turn an average run game into a good run game.
Speaking of, I'm ready to defend Andre Carrick after watching some tape when you're done. You called him out at left guard. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say was if Dylan Sampson picks up pass pro, they're going to be elite because Dylan Sampson is deadly with the ball in his hands. But the thing I will say is I don't think it's a big deal if you don't have a running back who can turn a 5-yard gain into a touchdown run. I don't think that's necessary in this offense.
I think Andre Carrick has a lot of upside we haven't seen before. I think Tennessee's coaches brought him in based off the conversation I had with somebody, and they brought him in to kind of be a utility guy. And I'm not sure that he ever learned left guard as well as he should have. Now, he may not be good, and you're giving me the kind of that condescending, doubtful look, and that's fine. But he started once at right tackle, once at left tackle, once at jumbo tight end, which technically isn't even a starting spot. It's just 22, but they list it on UT's website. And then he was hurt for the last 7 games of last year. I don't care if it's Andre Kurg or Bob Smith. That's not the kind of season you star in, Caleb. You got to give me that. You play 4 different positions to start, and then you end hurt for the last 7 games. Let's cut Andre Kurg a little bit of slack.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question.
A little bit of slack.
Okay, I'll cut him some slack, and sometimes players take a step forward the next year and prove me wrong. So I could be fair with you on that, but I guess my question is, was he moving around because they didn't know where to put him because he wasn't good anywhere?
That's fair. That's fair.
And
there was some uncertainty there. So did they make a bad call I think what makes this hurtful, if this was a true freshman that came in and played like that last year, you'd say, wow, way to go. Okay, but he didn't. So,
and don't forget, he started left guard against Virginia, and then they started moving him around.
Yes. So you're right. Either they couldn't find a place to put him, but there were injuries with Cooper Mays, and there were injuries all over the line. I'm just going to say I think he has – okay. I think he can be, let's say, below average, very good elite. I think he can be a very good offensive lineman. I'm not saying he has ability to be elite, but I'm going to go very good. And I think you're going to see it earlier this season than later. I think you're going to be like, okay, I'm good with Kurg now at left guard.
Okay, let me do this.
But I'm not saying elite. I'm not going down that road.
Yes. This isn't a crazy Caleb conspiracy, or maybe it is, but it's a. Are you gonna hit the board for this one? All right. Andre Carrick actually didn't play the last 7 games due to injury, so it wasn't like he was reported like injured and playing. Unlike Dante Thornton, who had reportedly been hurt at the beginning of the year before missed the end of the season, and we know what happened to Dante Thornton because he got hurt.
Yeah, Josh Heupel is so beloved by his players; they don't get mad about it. But the way he handles injuries just really makes them look bad.
It does. Here's the other question I'm coming with. I'm told I was too hard on Dante Thornton because he was injured at the first part of last year. Now I'm told I was too hard on Andre Carrick because he missed the last 7 games due to injury. By the way, that injury is not disclosed. Okay, conspiracy coming in.
No, he's not eligible for red shirt.
No. It's not a red shirt. It's not a red shirt. Is Tennessee lying about injuries to cover its players for lack of production? And I come to this by saying, did Andre Carrick just get benched the last 7 games? And did the Josh Heupel come out and say he was hurt to cover for him?
Elias says,
that's crazy.
Caleb conspiracy segment. You know they sell orange tinfoil. I did not know that. There's something there. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Have a fantastic weekend. Hit the like and subscribe button. Boy, we like that.
Dave didn't even answer my question because he knows I'm right.
Maybe. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a present.